Namaskaras to Swamiji, to Gurumai, and to all the scholars who are assembled here today. I'll try my best because I'm going to talk about Tattuvarāyar. A lot of this thing has already been spoken by all the speakers before me, starting with Justice Raghunathan and then our Professor Paneerselvam, and so many others in this session also have spoken. So there's nothing new that I'm going to talk about Tattuvarāyar's philosophy. Because Tattuvarāyar took upon himself to take the Advaita philosophy to the Tamil milieu. So how did he manage to do this? He did this through his literary skills. He had a very deep knowledge in the philosophy, but like Professor Paneerselvam said, it is also the social situation, conditions, as well as the prevalent religious conditions at a certain period of time that dictate, the mentality of the people. So if you have to make something attractive to them, you have to speak their language. We had Dr. Lavanya talking about Avadai Akkal's Advaita songs in the folk tradition. We are going to see how Tattuvarāyar, he could talk both to the elite in literature as well as to the lay person. Okay, let me begin. Works on Vedanta were originally in Sanskrit, as we all know, and Professor Paneerselvam mentioned, and so many other, even Dr. Vinod Murali mentioned that Paramartha Darshanam was the first Vedanta work in Tamil. When I say first Vedanta work, it means until then, everything was a translation or an adaptation from the Sanskrit works. So the first time we come across something written originally in Tamil, where did it start? It starts with Paramartha Darshanam. And to the extent that I was studying, Paramartha Darshanam was first the first Visishtadvaita work. But here I come to know that yes, in Advaita Vedanta also we have had this Paramartha Darshanam, which was the first work in Vedanta. And they made their appearances, the first works, original works, made their appearances somewhere between the 13th and 15th centuries, as Professor Paneerselvam was able to analyze the time-wise development of literature in Tamil. And these Tamil works on Advaita, they were shaped by the prevailing historical, literary, religious and philosophical influences. And among these, Kali Kannudaya Vallal of the 14th century is credited with the beginnings of Advaita works in Tamil. But he was actually a Shaiva Siddhantan, even he had taken sannyasa under that order, and later on he converted himself into Advaita Vedanta, and therefore the works that he started writing were a synthesis of Shaivism, because he followed Shaivism earlier and Advaita Vedanta, which he took to much later. And I think that influence was definitely seen in his this one, and his lineage was the Kannudai Vallal lineage. Initially, when we see these initial writings on Advaita Vedanta in Tamil, there were four important authors in Tamil Advaita. One is, like I said, it started with Kali Kannudaya Vallal. And then we had Swarupananda, whom Professor Chandrasekhar talked about, Tattuvarāyar, who was the nephew as well as a disciple of Swarupananda, and much later came Tattuvarāyar. They all belong to the same century, interestingly. But one after the other, we see the hierarchy. They were active between 1400 to 1475. Their works have been interpreted and commented upon by many scholars. I am not going to give the names of all those people. There are a lot of commentaries available. Among all those four mentioned, or those authors who are mentioned above, Kannudaya Vallal's Olivil Udukkam has been translated into English. Even Ramana Ashramam has done it. Tattuvarāyar's Kaivalya Navanitam has been translated into Malayalam, Gujarati, English and German. And notable among the later Tamil Advaitins who wrote original works were Ilakkana Vilakkam, Vaidyanatha Teshikar, Shenkotai Avadai Amma, whom Dr. Lavanya talked about, and Ramana Maharishi, whom Dr. Sampath Kumar talked about, Ramana Maharishi. When we come to the contribution of Mathalayams, it was brought out by Dr. Vinod Murali. Notable among all of them who are still very active and committed to it today are the Kovilar Mathalayam, and then we have the Vedanta Matham at Tirupuvanam, that is Kashikananda Jnanacharya Swamigal, who wrote the Padartha Bhaskaran Urai on Sasi Vannabodham. He belonged to this particular institution of Vedanta Matham at Tirupuvanam. Then Swami Chidbhavananda Ashram in Vedapuri, Teni, it was headed earlier by Swami Omkarananda, and now it is headed by Swami Purnananda. And Swami Purnananda runs another ashram at Erode called Purna Yoga Nilayam. And then we always have this Ramana Ashramam at Tiruvannamalai. These are but a few Advaitic institutions which propagate the philosophy through Tamil medium. And among Tamil Advaitin authors, Tattuvarāyar stands out for his body of work on Advaita Vedanta, not just the numbers, but for its philosophical content and literary beauty. And so, I am going to make an attempt to give you a glimpse of the literary merits or the literary beauty in the philosophical works of Tattuvarāyar. Now, based on Dr. Chandrasekhar was talking about the life history of Swarupananda, based on the evidences quoted by Vaiyapuri Pillai and other scholars, we may assume that Tattuvarāyar's period, that Tattuvarāyar flourished somewhere between 1450 and 1475, and that he belonged to the later part of the 15th century. Now, we have all this account from Kovilar Mathalayam's introductions to all the books they publish on Tattuvarāyar's works, and according to, especially when you see the introduction to the Paduturai and Adangan Murai, the Kovilar Mathalayam has published almost all the works of Tattuvarāyar. Tattuvarāyar and his maternal uncle Swarupanandar were born in an orthodox Smartha family, that is a Shaivite family, around the year 1653, if we do the calculation according to Kovilar Mathalayam. They were born in the town of Virai, which is also known as Veeramanagar in Nadunadu. But some are of the view that both belong to a Madhva family, and that Tattuvarāyar was born at Veeramanagar and Swarupanandar was born at Sendamangalam. Now, Swarupanandar and Tattuvarāyar are said to have resided in Tiruvalamchuri also, near Tiruchi, for a considerable period. And some of the later followers of this tradition, they embraced Veerashaivism, as I think Professor Panniselva mentioned, that later on it branched out into Veerashaivism. But these names, Tattuvarāyar and Swarupanandar, were etymological names, perhaps given to them by their disciples, because the former Tattuvarāyar had deeply analyzed, thoroughly understood, and also taught the nature of truth, Sattvam, Tattvam. And the latter, that is Swarupanandar, had taught the nature of the self, Swarupa. And therefore, maybe these were all what we call Karanapayargal. And coming to their Samadhis, both of them trained under, like Professor Chandrasekhar said, both Swarupanandar trained under Swami Shivaprakasa, who was a Shaivite, Shaiva Siddhantin. And the Samadhi of Shivaprakasa Swamigal is near Tiruvarur. It is going to be like a triangle. It is near Tiruvarur. The Samadhi of Swarupanandar is between Tiruvannamalai and Tirumudukundram, which is also known as Virudachalam. And the Samadhi of Tattuvarāyar is midway between Chidambaram and Virudachalam at Irumbudur. Temple, Sri Tattveshwara temple is maintained at the Samadhi of Tattuvarāyar there. Now, let us go to the next slide. I'll begin to talk about the literary merits of Tattuvarāyar's works. Tattuvarāyar was hailed as a Ubhaya Kavi. Ubhaya means both. Why? Because he was erudite. The uncle and the nephew both were erudite in both Sanskrit and Tamil. And he was an adept in Tamil versification. Versification means writing poetry. And his works, I will be going into more detail about his works. His works include Paduthurai, Hadanganmurai, Shivaprakasa Peruntirattu, Kuruntirattu. Then in Tamil, I'll use the Sanskrit pronunciations which is better. Brahma Gitai, Ishvara Gitai, and so on. And some of his works are original. A few others are adaptations from the Sanskrit text of the same name. And his Paduthurai is also known as Tattuvarāyar Chattiram. That is the philosophy of Tattuvarāyar. That means one has to look into Paduthurai to understand the philosophy of Tattuvarāyar better. What is his take on Advaita? His works exhibit the influences of Advaitins like Shankara and Vidyaranya. Now, they have never met. One instance, we don't have any account of Tattuvarāyar meeting with Vidyaranya or for that matter Vedanta Deshika, because that will be a different thing when I come to talking about his works. And we see influences of the Vaishnavite Alvars, the Shaiva Nayanmars, Tirumular's Tirumandiram. Very blatantly we can see a lot of influence from Tirumandiram, and Ilankari Kudi Meimuri Devar's Meimuri Charitai. Now, all these works, they spell lyrical beauty and the depth of the Advaita philosophy. Tattuvarāyar's works, when we talk about the genres, they include 3 Venba collections. Venba are couplets. 1 Pillai Tamil, we all know about the Andadi Pillai Tamil. Then 2 Andadis, we have beautiful Andadis, whether it is in the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition or even among the the Sri Vaishnava tradition. 2 Ulas, we have, Tiruvidi Ulas, so many things. 2 Paranis, it is not just one Parani that he wrote, he wrote 2 Paranis. And 6 Malais, we have a lot of Malais also, Tirumambalai, Tirumalai, and so many things in Vaishnava, but we have that with Tattuvarāyar also. Why I am saying this? To say that the Vaishnavite Alvars influence is seen in all his writings. And he has also written a number of other Prabandhas. Prabandhas means treatises. A general idea about these genres seen in this work as a whole is what I am going to talk about. He uses many of the medieval genres in Tamil literature. Today, Professor was talking about this Naveenam in everything. Like even when I send a few poems to any of these magazines, Tamil magazines, which I used to think are a good literary, spokespeople, they turn it back saying that koncha moderna ezhudunga. I don't understand what is modern. Okay, pudu kavithai konja ezhudi anupungle. So we see most of these people who wrote what we enjoy have stuck to a certain structure in the metrical as well as the thought processes of what is being conveyed in all these deep texts. And so some of the medieval genres that genre we see is Ammanai, even Adyar has written Ammanai, Andadi, Thalatu, Thudu, Pillai Tamil, Chinna Poovenba. He is only one to have written a Chinna Poovenba, and that is the only verse which is being quoted as example, studied by all Tamil students, graduate students, and by all Tamil scholars. Nobody else has written Chinna Poovenba. Then you have Ula, Kalambakam, Parani, Siledai, Kalimadal, Pallandu, Palli Eluchi, Pavai, Vallaipattu, and so on. So he has composed, when all these is put together, this is only the genre, but all his poems put together are in 4 anthologies, where the verses are by others as well as by himself. And he has also done 2 translations from Sanskrit, like the Brahma Gita and the Ishvara Gita. A unique feature noticed in his works is that he intended to speak about the non-dual Brahman of Advaita Vedanta as the absolute one beyond all names and forms. This is his intention. However, being a disciple of Swarupananda, who was initiated into Vedanta by the Shaiva Siddhanta preceptor Shiva Prakasa, Tattuvarāyar refers to the absolute Brahman as a supreme Shivam in his works. We see this in Tirumular's Thirumandiram. The absolute final is being referred to as Shivam. For example, we see this in the Ishvara Gita. Tattuvarāyar's individual works, they include the anthologies and translations. The individual works are Shiva Prakasa Venba and Tattvamritam. Now, the Shiva Prakasa Venba is the first work of Tattuvarāyar. It is a short work of 43 Venba verses, and it is in praise of his Guru, Swarupananda's Guru, Shiva Prakasa. So, we see in all his works, his invocations will be either of his Guru or his Grand Guru or of both. Tattvamritam is a work of 137 verses. I am giving the details are there. I am not going to read fully. But here, Professor Chandrasekhar gave the story as to how the uncle and the nephew, they went in two different directions looking for their Guru, and finally, Swarupananda was lucky to find Shiva Prakasar, and then Tattuvarāyar came and he became the disciple of Swarupananda, and both of them studied as Shiva Prakasar also. That is there. But where did this happen? They saying, at Kovattam, near Paineli Vellarai. This is where they found Shiva Prakasar, and they surrendered unto him, and then they say, Baba Marukkum Bodham Pugalga is the request they make, humble request they make to Shiva Prakasa, and then they learn Advaita under this thing, Shaivite preceptor. A later treatise titled, now this is Tattvamritam by Tattuvarāyar. He mentions all this in Tattvamritam. And a later treatise titled Tattvamrita Kattalai is an exposition of this Tattvamritam. Now, when yeah, these are all the individual works. I think I missed a little, but let me get yeah. Among his this one anthologies. Next one. Among his anthologies, we have 4 anthologies, which are Shiva Prakasa Peruntirattu, Kuruntirattu, Paduturai, and Adanganmurai. Now, the Shiva Prakasa Peruntirattu, these verses will talk about the cardinal thoughts of all philosophical schools from Charvaka to Vedanta, and the refutations and the defenses, the nature of yoga, the nature of the direct means to knowledge, the greatness of Guru Bhakti, and many other details. Many texts which are quoted in this Peruntirattu have disappeared. Only a few are available, and among them very few have seen print, so we would not know how far, from where he got all these thoughts. In this thing, if you looked at the title, Shiva Prakasa Peruntirattu, he has compiled 12 invocatory verses, and there are 2821 textual verses, and all of them are in honor of his grand preceptor Shiva Prakasa, and therefore this anthology gets the name Shiva Prakasa Peruntirattu. In fact, he affirms this fact in verse 53 of that Shiva Prakasa, which is also known as Shiva Prakasam. But once you say he has taken from other texts also, many of them are also fictitious. They are not, they don't exist really, but he created that titles, as if such texts existed. But I will, for example, the bibliography, Nool Attavanai by Ko Vadivelu Chettiar for this Peruntirattu, it lists the names of 146 texts. But according to Arunachalam, it gives the names of 147 texts. But only a few, like Saiva Tirumuraigal, Nanamritam, Sivanandamalai, and so many other things are something available now. Not all of them are available. This one. Next, please. In the Kuruntirattu, it has select verses from this Peruntirattu, and in keeping with this, this also is in keeping with the topics that he is talking about. And here it is 1340 verses. Now, the disciples who studied both these Thirattus together were referred to as the Thirattu Sandadiyar or Sandana. Santanatar. Though in tradition there was not a lineage, there was not a Santanam as a third Santanam at all. But if you see, there is one author, Swayam Prakasha Yogi, who says that he is of the Tirata Santanam. He compiled the Ayira Tirata, the anthology of 1000 verses. Probably it was compiled in the 16th century, and it consists of 1100 select verses from the Thevaram and Tiruvaimozhi. And since the collection of verses on Lord Shiva as well as on Lord Vishnu, Ayira Tirata was referred to as Shankara Narayana Tirata. And it is not known whether this was published, and we don't have any manuscript to confirm this. Next, please. We come to Paduturai. This is a collection of 1140 verses, which is grouped under 138 topics. Now, the construction of all these verses are as if they were meant for the lay people to understand. Until then, if you see, the other texts look very high, very deep. But this looks, that even the lay people can understand. Excuse me, please. So, here also, he eulogizes his preceptor Surupanandar, Siva Prakashar, and also another Advaitin, Tattva Prakashar and Paripurna Prakashar. We don't know how they were related to Tattuvarāyar or Surupanandar, but he is praising them also in these. And there are also the references to the life history of Surupananda and to the celestial names of Uma Maheshwara, Mount Kailasha, Nandi, and all of them. Also, we see the names of Kadavul Munivar, Tirupananthalar, Madurai Punyai Munivar, Vada Munivar, Ulaguyya Vandar, and all these things make us wonder, did Tattuvarāyar conceive these lines, these names on the lines of the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition? We don't know who these people were. But when you look at these, we see that there is a non-bias towards Shaivism and Vaishnavism. And some of them are written in the style of Kalivenba. Some of them, like Shiva Shiva Sankirtanam and Dvadasha Nama Sankirtanam. Shiva Shiva Sankirtanam is a Shaivite bhajan. Dvadasha Nama Sankirtanam is a Vaishnavite bhajan. In this way we see. And he also adopted the style of Tiruvachakam in his verses. Sections like Acho, Ammane, Annai, Undi, Empavai, Kuyil, Charal, and Padayachi and Palli Elchi are some such instances which are on the Tiruvachakam style. But Arunari Vilakam is styled after the Tirupadayachi and Charal after Tirucharal of Tiruvachakam. Then Karanar Kana Karanatta Yegalchi. It is styled after the Aichar Koravai of the epic poem Silapadikara. So these are, next one please. And some of the topics, he deals with several topics are like Abhayam, fearlessness, Varadam, there is grace, Sharanam. So many topics it goes on. And you have funny topics like in this one she quoted Karam. Karam is the trumpet. Karam Udul. That one of them is like that. He talks about something called Karal, the weathercock. The wind direction. It has the form of a cock, and it shows which side the wind is blowing. And Kurati, Kudal, Chettiar, all these things are there. Then he uses Tachandi and Tachan for carpenter, Tattan, Nayandi, then Bhagavati for goddess, then Pambati and Pitaran for a snake charmer, Parpan for Brahmin, Paraichi for a woman belonging to the lower caste. Then uses even Annai, Hakkaichi, Appa, Thai, all this showing relationships. So you see what he has done. And there are also topics named after birds and animals. What he has done is he is trying to take these short verses to the lay people to understand Vedanta. And Arunachalam says that these novel poetic constructions are very popular among the people in those areas even today. Now I don't know how popular they are. Then there is another work called the Nenjirku Amaivurai. Like today we were talking about the Manam, like control the mind. And in Paduthuri it consists of 22 Venbas. And these verses which are in Nenjirku Amaivurai are also found at the end of Shivananda Malai, which is an excellent Shaiva Siddhanta Pramana text which appeared in the 14th century. So, this reveals Tattuvarāyar's deep interest in the traditional texts, especially in the Shaiva Siddhanta text, and also that he was later to the 14th century, because there is also this debate on his period. Next please. In Adangan Murai, it is a collection of 18 small poetic works. But when I say small poetic works, the Varanis are not small, they are very large. Anyway, each work bears two names. One name, the first name is based on the literary style of that work. The second name is based on the topic of that work. Now, if you see, I'll just give some examples. Tiruthalattu, that it is, the Thalattu is a style, but what is the topic? It is Tattva Prakasham. It enlightens you on the philosophy. So, it is called Tattva Prakasham. Now, the another word is Pillai Tirunamam, also known as Pillai Tamil, but its philosophical name is Tattva Nilayam. It eulogizes Shiva Prakasa, and in this, Tattuvarāyar praises the Guru as the sage of Tiruvadavur, the one who is adorned with Tiruvachakam. And he also mentions a few human feats of some Shaiva Nayanmar. So all this show his acclimatization as well as his affiliation to the Shaivite texts as well as the Shaivism tradition. Then finally I mentioned about this Chinnapu Venba, which it talks any Chinnapu will have normally 10 units in it under that. Here he eulogizes the virtues of his Guru Swarupananda under 10 Angams, Dasha Angam. And those 10 Angams are the name, the kingdom, the city, the river, the hill, the wealth, the flag, the drum, the army, and the flower garland of the particular ruler. And Tattuvarāyar's Chinnapu Venba is considered to be the only work of this particular genre of Chinnapu in Tamil literature. And hence it is always quoted as the only example for this rare style of the verse. Next one please. And we have so many other works. I am not going to get into the names of all those. So I can just, I'll pause it for a few seconds. You can just know the names. And the next one also. Again, if you see the first title, slide 15. If you see, the first title is the style of the work. The alternate title is the name of the topic. So, this is how it goes until, next slide please. Next, we come to something very important. It is called Ajñavadai Parani. Ajñavadai Parani, it is also known as Tattva Kaatshi or Jnana Parani, because it talks about this one, the demolition of ignorance and the arising of knowledge. And here I will not go into the whole thing, but this is a very important work when it comes to Tamil Advaita. Ajñavadai Parani, and next slide please, Mohavadai Parani. If you see, Ajñavadai Parani is annihilation of ignorance. Mohavadai Parani is annihilation of delusion. And the alternate name for this Mohavadai Parani as Tattva Nirupakam, let me say, was not mentioned in any of the references that I went through. I happened to see that at the end of one manuscript, and therefore I was able to provide this alternate name as Tattva Nirupakam. Otherwise, many of the texts say it doesn't have a philosophical name. Some of the authors have already said that. It doesn't have this one. But the alternate name is Tattva Nirupakam. Next slide please. So, in this we have an important work called Sasi Vannabodham. Now, there is a small history behind this. Swarupananda saw this Mohavadai Parani and he just said, முடியில்லாதவள் கொண்டை முடிப்பது போல் அப்படின்னு சொல்லியாச்சு. ஓகே, இப்போ he was so crestfallen. என்னது இப்படி சொல்லிட்டு போயிட்டார் நம்ம குரு. And the guru went away for a siesta. It is said that Tattuvarāyar sat down and he wrote this entire 110 verses of Sasi Vannabodham within that short period of his this guru taking rest and coming back. And it talks about the entire Advaita principles for a beginner. And you won't believe it's for a beginner, because he talks about all the pedagogy which we take years and years to understand. All our teachers take so much time to make this. Slide 19 please. Then the final one is Amritam or Amritashara Venba according to the style, but it is also known as Tattva Darshanam. Here he actually he talks about Advaita Vedanta and briefly he refutes 20 other philosophical schools, but the cardinal principle of a particular school, whether he is talking about Advaita Vedanta itself or the rival school, that cardinal principle that is spelt in one Venba, and the refutation of that school is done in another Venba. In this manner it goes on, and he speaks about all the other disciplines necessary to understand this. The next slide please. And in all this we notice two unique aspects. One thing is he strives to retain both Shaivism and Vaishnavism, and yet he is trying to establish a new path on the lines of Advaita Vedanta of Shankara. Secondly, unlike the later Tamil Advaitins, whose works were not conforming strictly to chaste Tamil, Tattuvarāyar's works, they shine with that chaste Tamil, lyrical beauty and the chasteness of that language. Next slide please. So, next we come to his translations. Two translations are there, Ishvara Gita and Shiva Prakasham. And here again, he'll begin both the texts with salutations to his preceptor or grand preceptor. And this one, that is Ishvara Gita, it is not as big as the original in Sanskrit, but he tries to compress all of them and give them in this Tamil verse. And what about this one? Okay. Next slide please. Vedanta, it talks about Brahman as the absolute, and Tattuvarāyar's Ishvara Gita is a work on Vedanta, yet it presents Shiva as absolute, and the text has been well constructed, and it is interspersed with prosodic verses, like in the prose order, and therefore these are called Chanda Padalgal. Tattuvarāyar, he employs all the expressions and viewpoints which were in vogue at that time. For example, in this, I am showing only this as one example. The other ones I am not showing any example in poetry. He uses both the word Velga and Jaya Jaya in this. If you see, in verse 16 of chapter 1, Rishigal Venerable, he uses the word Sanskrit expression Jaya Jaya. Jaya Jaya, Devam Devar Potram Deva Madeva Potri. But in verse 18 of the same chapter, he will use a Tamil expression Velga. Velga Bhutapati, Velga Shivapati, Velga Yogapati, Velgave. So this is something, where we see that he is blending so much to bring the tradition and the knowledge to the lay people. Next one please. So in Brahma Gita, again, we find that it is again, it is a condensed version, and while the bigger this one has too many chapters, the Tamil version has only 12 chapters, but it presents the essence of only 9 Upanishads. The original presents more number of Upanishads. And Tattuvarāyar begins the Tamil text of Brahma Gita, as is his practice, with his invocation to both his preceptors. And here he would be talking about here we have the alternate name as Swarupananda Siddhi. Why is it called Swarupananda Siddhi? It is because it is called the realization of one's own nature, which is bliss. And therefore here too he employs prosodic verses in excellent literary style. Now I come to the final conclusion. Now if we see all these numerous works of Tattuvarāyar, we see that they all exhibit his depth of knowledge of Advaita Vedanta, his erudition in both Sanskrit and Tamil, and his command of the literary skills in presenting the philosophy not only to the scholarly world but also to the lay people. When we see all his folk songs, his Thani Padalgal, all of them are very delightful and short. Even the lay people can understand. And in this manner, we find that Tattuvarāyar was as much a trendsetter poet as he was a philosopher. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.